You always replied. You were always around. You always found time, even when you didn't have any. And the more you gave, the less they valued you. Not because you did something wrong, because you did too many things right. You thought availability was a virtue, that if you were reliable, devoted, and always there, people would notice and appreciate it. But the opposite happened. The more available you were, the less valuable you became. Today, we're going to break down why that happens, not to make you colder or harder, but so you finally understand the rules of a game you've been playing without knowing them. Part 1. The Diamond Paradox. Here's something almost nobody says out loud. A diamond is just carbon. Chemically, nothing special, but people pay fortunes for them. Why? Not because of what they're made of, because of what they're not made of, which is everywhere. You can't just find one on the sidewalk. They're hard to get, hard to come by, hard to hold on to. Now picture something different. Imagine someone left a full bucket of diamonds outside your door every single morning. Free, no conditions, just because. How long before you stopped noticing them? How long before you didn't bother checking if one was missing? Not as long as you'd think. Here's the thing. The problem isn't that you don't have value. You are the diamond, but you've been acting like gravel. You've made yourself so available, so predictable, so permanently present that people stopped thinking of you as something rare. And the moment that happens, their desire to appreciate you fades. Not because you got worse, because there got to be too much of you. Adam Smith described this in the 18th century as the paradox of value. Water is the most essential thing for survival, yet it costs almost nothing. A diamond is completely useless for survival and costs a fortune. Value isn't determined by usefulness, it's determined by scarcity, and that rule doesn't only apply to things, it applies to you. Part 2. Transactional Reality. And this is the part most people don't want to hear. We're taught from childhood, if you're good enough, devoted enough, patient enough, eventually someone will give you something back. That love and respect are rewards for who you are. But there's a harder truth. People don't value you for who you are. They value you for what you give them and for how hard it is to get. This isn't cynicism, it's evolutionary psychology. We all evaluate relationships transactionally, consciously or not. What do I get from this person? What does their presence in my life cost me? Robert Cialdini described this through the reciprocity principle, one of the deepest social mechanisms we have. But it only functions when there's a real exchange happening. When one side gives freely and without limit, the principle breaks down. What's free doesn't trigger a sense of debt. It triggers a habit of taking. You give them your time, your attention, your emotional support, your willingness to rearrange your life around theirs. And what do you get back? Inconsistency, silence, or on a good day, polite indifference. And here's the most important thing to understand. They're not doing this out of malice. They're doing it because you taught them to. You showed them that your presence, your time, and your attention are things that can be obtained without effort, without investment, without respect. And they simply accepted the terms you set. Because why pay for something that's given for free? There's a well-documented psychological concept for this: habituation. It describes how any stimulus, no matter how pleasant it is at first, gradually stops producing a response when it appears too regularly. This applies to music, food, experiences, and it applies to people. The person who is always there, always reachable at any hour, gradually becomes part of the background, not from lack of affection, but from an excess of predictability. Erich Fromm wrote in The Art of Loving that we live in a culture built around buying, consuming, and replacing, and relationships are no exception. When someone becomes too convenient, too available, too reliably ours, we unconsciously shift from appreciating them to consuming them. We stop seeing a person, we start seeing a function. But here's something that almost never comes up in this conversation. Being taken for granted doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't start with a big betrayal or a clear-cut violation. It starts with very small things, which is exactly why so few people catch it in time. Part 3. How devaluation actually happens. It starts with a test. People don't consciously plan to devalue you, at least not usually, but everyone who enters your life eventually checks the edges. It's an evolutionary mechanism. We all assess where another person's limits are and what happens if we nudge them slightly. First, someone shows up 10 minutes late. You smile. No worries, it's fine. Then 20 minutes. Then they cancel last minute. Then they don't reply for hours and blame it on being busy. Each time you nod, each time you say it's okay, each time you let it go, and each time you think you're showing understanding, that this is what maturity and flexibility look like, but what you're actually doing is sending a signal, a clear one. My patience has no limit. My time has no fixed value. Keep going. Philip Zimbardo's research on social influence showed that people form their behavior toward others based on how those others respond to norm violations. If a violation meets no resistance, it becomes the new norm. Your polite reaction to someone's disrespect doesn't signal strength of character, it signals your limits, or the absence of them. Look at this through a specific situation. There's someone who texts you at 1 in the morning, only when things are bad or they need something. During the day, silence. You reply, always, because what if something's wrong? But nothing is wrong. They just know at 1 in the morning you'll respond. And as long as you do, that arrangement will continue to exist, not because they're cruel, because you decided it would. Or at work, a manager who sets end-of-day deadlines, knowing you'll stay late without complaint because you've already done it several times without a word. You thought you were showing responsibility, but you were showing availability, and now it's an expectation, not appreciation. Every forgiveness without consequence isn't an act of generosity, it's an instruction manual. Here's how to treat me going forward. Part 4. The Law of the Void. Taking back your value. And now, the part we came here for. The way out of the availability trap isn't to become cold, vindictive, or strategically withholding. This isn't a game of silence. It's not manipulation. It's a return to your own value. Through one simple shift, you stop being the resource that's always within reach. Step 1. The mirror of priorities. Start reflecting back exactly the level of importance you're given, no more. Someone takes an hour to reply to you, you take an hour. Someone reschedules without explanation, you reschedule without explanation. Not in anger, no drama, just as a fact. This isn't punishment, it's calibration. You're showing that your time carries the same weight as theirs, not more, but not less either. Step 2. Create the echo. Stop initiating constantly. Stop filling every awkward pause. Stop bending your schedule around other people's indecision. This isn't passive aggression, it's absence. And absence is one of the most powerful psychological signals there is. Neuroscience research confirms that uncertainty activates the same region of the brain as physical pain. When you disappear from someone's field of view, even briefly, they start noticing your absence, sometimes for the first time. Step 3. Make them earn it. When you become less predictable, every response you give, every meeting you show up to, every moment of attention you offer carries weight. What used to be taken for granted now feels like something that was earned. Not because you changed, because the scarcity changed. And scarcity, as we know from the diamond paradox, is the true foundation of value. But here's the nuance most people miss, and it matters. These steps don't work as tactics if there's no real internal shift behind them. If you're disappearing while waiting to be chased, that's still dependency, just in a different form. Real absence isn't strategic withdrawal, it's genuine fullness. Your own time, your own goals, your own space that you don't need to fill with someone else's attention. Brené Brown wrote about this from a different angle. A person who doesn't need external validation to confirm their own worth is someone others actually want to be around. Not because they're unavailable, because they're complete. Completeness attracts. The kind of emptiness that constantly gets filled through other people repels, even if it draws people in at first. And one more thing worth saying directly. These steps aren't weapons aimed at specific people. They're not designed to punish anyone or make someone come looking for you. They're designed so you stop building your sense of worth around other people's reactions. Because as long as your self-esteem depends on whether someone replied on time or whether your efforts were acknowledged, you remain a hostage to other people's decisions. And a hostage and a diamond are very different things, even when both are silent.
The availability trap isn't a life sentence. It's a pattern, and patterns can be changed. You didn't become less valuable because someone failed to value you. They failed to value you because you weren't showing your value through scarcity. You were giving too freely, too much, too early, and people simply accepted the terms you set for yourself. The shift begins not with how you treat others. It begins with how you treat yourself, with what you allow, with what you no longer allow, with the understanding that your time, your attention, and your presence are not a free resource. They're something that has to be earned. And here's what's paradoxical about all of this. When you stop being afraid of not being valued, people start valuing you. Not because you became unavailable, but because you finally stopped the constant stream of justifications for why you deserve attention. A person who knows their own worth doesn't advertise it. They just live accordingly, and others feel that, even when they can't quite name what changed. A diamond doesn't change its composition depending on who's looking at it. It simply is what it is, and that's the source of its power. Thank you for watching all the way through. It tells me something, that you're interested in more than the surface, that you want to understand how things actually work. And if this one landed for you, a like means a lot. It's the simplest way to tell me this is worth going deeper on, and I really do want to keep going deeper on this.